hiphop.com.
Yeah, holy smokes, I'm no joke out the bullpen. Bringing nothing but heat, leave you hanging like clothespins. He's a beast when he goes in, ice cold frozen. The first round draft pick, number one chosen. Drop bombs, explosion, self-promotion. And I keep shit moving like a flanker in motion. I'm the number one spokesman, it's my devotion. That I'm dedicated to the rhyme is my own notion. Brown water's the potion, it put hair on your chest. Or you can put one in the air and it'll put you to rest. Sweet dreams, I'm about to fade. I got my mind on my money and I'm dreaming about getting this all paid. Mr. Go-Getter, Mr. Assertive, Mr. Initiative, Mr. Results, man, I'm all about my business, kid. Damn.
Oh, I love that tune so much.
So do I. All about business, all about results on a suddenly not so casual 7-point sharp Sunday. It is Sunday, September 17th, 2023. It is Circa Millions, the show. NFL Week 2. We are live and ready to dominate. It is Shark and Waters Nation, live on YouTube and Twitter, now known as X. It is the Shark of the Gun. Our guy Odds is at flag football practice. We hope he is dominating at the highest level in the world. Guns Picks, what's going on this morning, my brother?
Yeah, he runs his son team like Belichick did in the early 2000s. But I'm a little bit under the weather. My voice is a little bit raspy on this one. I want to call out Smoke. He thinks I'm going to be late. I was hanging out with that dude last night. Absolutely electric brother there joining us here. But listen, I'm ready for this slate. I went 4-1 in the Circa last week, and we went 3-3 on the plays 6-pack. But we're 8-3 on NFL this season, and we're going to continue to dominate the board, crush the books. We're coming off a great college football day, and we're going to continue that momentum into this one. I have 5 plays for you. Let's get it.
Absolutely not waiting around. First play, Fox Sports, 1 o'clock, Atlanta, Georgia, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. A lot to discuss in this game. Packers coming off of an absolute blowout in the division last week at the Bears, a game we miscapped, and I'm still confused as to what happened there. 38-20, now traveling back-to-back road games, going outside of the division. Historically, an awful spot for teams off of a road divisional win, going out of the division. Guns Picks, 1 o'clock, 1 play, 1 opportunity to dominate.
This is my top. I would say I have 2 top plays this week. This is one of them. Okay. I think Atlanta goes in there and destroys them. And I actually got this with the Circa at -1. They locked the numbers in on Friday. And now you're seeing the line move in that direction. It looks like the Sharps are hitting that hard, -3. But let's talk about where these two teams came from. All right, so Green Bay coming off a big win versus their, I call quote-unquote rival. It's not even a rival anymore. It's just a team they beat the snot piss out of in the division in Chicago. 38-20, doesn't matter who the quarterback is, but they only had a +18 net yard average, but the +2 turnover ratio is what got them the victory. You look at Atlanta coming off a divisional win themselves at home to a growing, developing Carolina Panthers team, 24-10, -60 net yard average on that one, but they had +3 in the turnover ratio. So the defense really pulled them into the victory and didn't make it close. Here, Atlanta loves to run the ball. Okay, they have a great 1-2 punch. I think that is probably the strength of that team. They put up 5 yards per carry versus Carolina. Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. That 1-2 punch there in that backfield is going to be absolutely dangerous. Whether it's going to be this year or it's going to be next year, I think this is going to be an explosive run-first offense. Then you got to look at the home to away splits with Green Bay and Atlanta. Green Bay on the road last season, -3-point differential, -35 net yard average, and that was with Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. Okay, Atlanta on the other side of the ball, directionless at quarterback and kind of swapping guys out. I think Ritter played closer towards the end of the year, but they had a +3-point differential, -14 net yard average at home. So they were getting victories at home regardless of the net yard average. And I think this week you're going to probably see a more one-dimensional Green Bay team. Aaron Jones potentially not playing. If he does play, I haven't looked at the injury report this morning. I forgot to check it. He has a hamstring issue, and if he does play, he's not going to be 100% in this one. And granted, they have AJ Dillon, they have some depth in the the running back position, but losing him is very a key point in that one. And that may be why the line moved to -3. I'm guessing, of course. Also, you got to look at this matchup. Home team is 6-0 straight up in this matchup. And then you have Green Bay. They just don't play well versus NFC South teams. You actually look at the history. They actually are very flat versus these teams, especially on the road. So you have Green Bay coming off a big win versus a rival. Jordan Love's first game, everybody high-fiving them. ESPN touting him as the next best thing for the Green Bay Packers. And then Atlanta quietly just took care of business. They didn't do anything spectacular, but they went in there and they got the job done. And I think they do it here today. So I'm going to take Atlanta here. I got them at -1 in the Circa. I got a -1 earlier in the week, but I would take them at -3 here where the line is now. And that's a 2-unit special.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we introed the game, going back just a couple of minutes ago, I mean, I think this is truly a really sharp look. And I mean, I think that people are falling in love with Jordan Love. I mean, maybe not ironically, his last name is Love, but when you really look at this game, you have to look towards what Guns is saying. I mean, first of all, our guy in the chat with a great stat, we want to give Football 97 a shout here. Desmond Ridder has not lost a home game since high school. Slightly anecdotal, but
I wish I had that in my write-up. That's a good point.
Does stand for something without question. And I agree with you. I think that, again, going off of a Bears game where now they've won 9 in a row against the Bears, Justin Fields and company, I think Matt Eberflus, maybe a end of the road for him up there. I think this is a coaching issue with the Bears. I think this is not symptomatic to how they're going to function against the rest of the league, particularly outside of division. And as I mentioned, going road off a divisional win is really difficult stuff. So the Gun, I think, is very much onto something there. And segueing to my first play of the broadcast, speaking of going outside of the division on the road, off of a divisional road win, we are going straight to upstate New York, Orchard Park, and we are buying the Buffalo Bills first half -5.5, 1-unit official. This is exactly what you want to buy. And people are going to get down on the Bills because they did lose, obviously, to an Aaron Rodgers-less Jets team on Monday Night Football. But when you start to really go through the Bills, I think the Bills are really developing very consistent patterns. And the first pattern we want to discuss here is purely the fact that within the division, the Jets do own this team. The Jets did beat them last year at MetLife Stadium, 20-17, and a game played in Orchard Park, 20-12 dud. So this is pretty much the Jets defense, an A-list top 5 DVOA defense, just owning Josh Allen and the boys. That is not how they perform against the rest of the league, particularly at home in the first half outside of the division. And you go back to last year, this team is 4-0 ATS outside of the division at home. And this is where they absolutely turn up. Let's talk about it for a brief second. Monday, September 19th, 41-7 blowout of the Titans, first half cover. I think more specifically off a road tight one at Baltimore, where they did not score the football very well, 23-20. Came home against Pittsburgh on Sunday, October 9th. Absolute hammer, 38-3, up by significant margin in the first half. I think even more specifically, as specific as it can possibly get in this environment, loss at the Jets, Sunday, November 6th last year, 20-17. Came home against Minnesota. Don't be fooled by the final score. We talked about this before. Minnesota backdoored them 33-30 in overtime. The Bills were up 24-10 at the half. This is where they come out. They juice it up. They bring pace, energy, and absolute passion for football. This is the consistency to the inconsistency that you want to buy. And you look at the other side of this game. This is where the Raiders are traveling road off of a divisional win last week at Denver. They left it all on the field, physical game, 17-16, back and forth, real leatherhead throwback style of game. Now they got to go all the way to New York, upstate New York, angry Bills team, early kick time for their body time. This is a death zone spot for the Raiders. Absolutely love this spot early. We are on Buffalo, first half, -5.5, 1-unit official. Staying course here, talking more out of division football. Chargers on the road here, Nissan Stadium, Nashville, Tennessee. Guns, every time we talk about the Chargers, I have to take a deep breath because this team is perpetually right on the number.
Yes.
And look no further than last year, a game played between the Titans and the Chargers. It was a -3 line, and the game did finish 17-14 Chargers. You capped them in week 1 to win. They lost. Now you're capping them to win an official play on this beautiful, suddenly not so casual Sunday morning.
Yeah, I just want to call out Sam to help with your plight on this one. Bills 7-0 against the spread with 3+ turnovers from the previous game with Allen. First half, full game. The man is sharp. Go follow him on Twitter at Sam Calmer. Dude is legit. All right, let's talk about this Tennessee Chargers game. Okay, Tennessee coming off a loss, close loss. Actually, it's almost like Variable was playing for the spread and not the win. Kicking that field goal when they're in the red zone, not going for it on 4th down instead of going for the win. I think he felt like he could get the ball back. 16-15, minus 66 net yards, minus 1 turnover ratio. I think this Saints team playing at home, I think they can really stop the run, and that is what kind of hamstrung, so to speak, the Tennessee Titans. But you have the Chargers here coming off a 36-34 loss where they had full control of the game, and they kind of just let Miami get back in there. Some egregious long throws to Tyreek Hill, and then they just lost the game completely. They gave up 536 yards of total offense to Miami, minus 103 net yards, and it was a 2-point game. So that gives you an idea what you're looking at for the defense in the Chargers. Now, Tennessee, what do they like to do? They have King Henry. They like to run the ball, right? That's what they do. They only ran Henry 15 carries last week. Okay, he had 4.2 yards per carry versus the New Orleans Saints, which is a low carry total for this guy. And I don't know if it's because they're just trying to progressively get him into full regular season mode or what. But I think on this game versus this Charger team, who is one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL last season, they give up 5.4 yards per carry. They were dead last in 2022. And really, you didn't see that last week with Miami because Miami's one-dimensional. They don't have a run game. They have Mosberg, and he's not like a power back. They have to face a power back here. They gave up 3.5 yards per carry in week 1 to Miami. But like I said, I was like, they're a pass-first offense. They're very one-dimensional. Both these teams did meet last year with the Chargers winning the game 17-14 as 3-point home favorites. The line is 3. Ironically, okay. So, but you look at the matchup when these two teams meet, 7-0 straight up. The home team is in the last 7 meetings between these two teams. So I expect Tennessee to really expose the rush defense of San Diego. I'm sorry, not Los Angeles, like you didn't see in week 1. So there's a little bit of overreaction there, in my opinion, of the Chargers and their performance because everybody thinks that Miami's good. I think Miami is suspect at best. Tannehill will have more time. He can do what he likes to do. Use Henry in the run game, gas those yards, then go to play action, and then hit DeAndre Hopkins. I see this more Tennessee game, and you get him as a home dog. Vrabel likes to be a home dog. I think he puts it in the notes when he discusses film with his boys and gets them fired up here. And also look at this. Tannehill was pressured a lot last week. Guess how many sacks the Chargers had? 0. All right, they're not putting any pressure on the quarterback in this one, so Tannehill's going to be comfortable. I think, and you have to know this, Miami has a bad line. Their offensive line's terrible, and they held them to 0 sacks. So with all that being said, I know I'm filibustering here, but give me Tennessee plus 3 2-unit special.
Great word, filibuster. We like that one. We're not in Congress. We're here on Sharky Waters Nation on a beautiful Sunday morning, week 2.
Harumph. There we go.
Bing, bing, bow. And let's continue this game for a brief second. I want to make a couple comments here. I think one of the most exploitable points on this board this week is movement of totals. There was a cluster of unders last week, and I think this is actually an overlook in this game. And I think as a cross-reference point to the game that Guns mentioned last year, 17-14. For us that are doing some small arithmetic on this Sunday morning, that is 31 points. This line comes in at 45.5. And Tennessee did not score the football last week at all. And as Guns mentioned, the Chargers are struggling in the pass rush. We're not entirely sure why, but they are. And I think that if you're capping this game, in my opinion, the best look in this game is the over 45.5, 6 now. And I think you're going to see more points in this game as the Chargers are not going to defend. So just want to make that point, and let's keep it moving. Excuse me. Next play, Fox Sports, Ford Field, 1 o'clock. Seahawks at Lions. Speaking of totals, these teams played to egregious over last year at Ford Field early season, 48-45 Seahawks. And I think ultimately that was symptomatic to the Lions in that beginning point of their season where they just had not figured out how to win ball games. They were favored in that game. They were -5. Books are putting the line right back at -5. And the line is coming down on the total. Again, not on this officially, but we want to have this conversation. When you see a game last year that almost reached 100 points and now the total is less than what the Seahawks scored in the game by themselves. This is telling you an under story. And you saw it in week 1 with the Lions. The Lions last year had a lot of young parts on their defensive line, a lot of young parts. And this is a defense that is improving rapidly and imminently. And I think you're going to see much more of a defensive style game this week. Top look here is without question the under. Guns, any comments on the side or the total?
Yeah, I think we have to look at this from a perspective. Me and my partner in the circle kind of looked at this game a little bit, but we kind of had to pass on it just on the fact that when you watched Seattle last week, Seattle actually had a lead versus the LA Rams at 13-7. Then they lost their their right tackle and their left tackle for the game. Once they went to the second half, it was all Rams, and really, the quarterback couldn't do anything. So what happened in this one? One of the tackles went on the IR. The other one is going to play, and he's the better one of the out of the tackles. And they also got Jason Peters from free agency, 41-year-old, by the way. I'm worried. I'm a little bit concerned about the protection with Seattle. Plus, you have a revenge spot from last year. This is the same situation. Early season, non-conference, Seattle traveling on the road, and really, to me, it screams I would say a small lean on, I don't know, Detroit money line. I hate the spread on this one. Lions functionality is kind of going in the way of Seattle, and I'm a little bit hesitant on that offensive line there. I do think Sharks' take on this one is a great take as far as the total is concerned, but for me, it has to be a full pass just for the fact that Seattle's offensive line is a little bit suspect right now.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I talked about this last week with agreeability of bets. I think it's a very interesting point. I think, obviously we all want to make money on these Sundays, but I think certain bets are just very disagreeable. And I think betting unders at 1 o'clock, let's be honest, when you bet an under, you just want the game to end. You don't really want the game to even exist. And that is honestly pretty brutal as a fan and as a person watching the game. So I don't really bet unders that often, particularly in football. And it is that. And I will say that on the air because I do think we all have a human aspect to handicapping. Betting unders is not very fun. You just want the game to purely end.
I disagree. I love unders, man. I love primetime unders. I'm an unders guy. I mean, I'll play an over. I played an over on, Thursday Night Football, just because the numbers made sense. But I love it when the perception is this team scores a lot of points. And you look at the total, and it's definitely telling a different story. That's just my opinion.
I agree with you. Analytically, I agree. I'm saying from a pure enjoyment perspective.
Yes. Oh yeah, for sure. You want points. I mean, come on. You don't want to watch a 3-0 game or 9-3 game.
Precisely. It's just a dud game. It's inefficient. It lacks any sort of entertainment quality. So just a point there. We do think the under is the best lean there. Staying the course, 1 o'clock, divisional football, finally on this beautiful Sunday. Paycor Stadium, Cincinnati, Ohio. Bengals come home really off of, I said it last week, and I'll talk about it briefly here. Just an incomprehensible performance for Joe Burrow on the road at the Browns last week. Guns Picks did have it correctly. However, we didn't think it was going to go down like that, where ultimately Joe Burrow signed the biggest contract in NFL history, and he came back with a performance that was truly lacking in any sort of professionalism. I don't care how good the defensive line and the pressure scheme was from the Browns. That was useless. So ultimately, you would expect a bounce back there, but I'm not entirely sure if we're going to see a bounce back here. We've talked about this going back to last year. I called them last year the procrastinators. And what I meant by that is purely this team plays when they feel urgency. And you might say they feel urgency because they lost in week 1. The last couple of years disagree with that statement. This team is a second half team of the season, not week 2. And I think the line is shortening up here with significance for that reason. I think books agree. I think books see this team finding their wind as they go forward weeks 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, not necessarily a divisional rivalry revenge game for the Ravens, who did take a margin loss late last season, 27-16. Crucial point there, Lamar Jackson was not playing. And neither was the backup from Utah. It was Anthony Brown from Oregon in the game, where the Ravens did outgain them close to 2-1, I believe, in that game. So the moral of the story in this particular game, I know people want to buy the bounce back on Cincinnati. I don't necessarily see it coming, and the line is incredibly short. The last time these teams played, Cincinnati did lay 11 or 11 and a half at home, and now it's coming all the way down to 3. This is a tight game. This is a really difficult game to cap. If I had any money on this game, I would actually look towards the road dog in this one. Guns?
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. The one thing that is keeping me off this game though is the injury report for the Baltimore Ravens. They lost a corner, they lost their safety and Humphrey. They're losing some key guys. Mark Andrews is probably not going to play in this one. So really, you see in Baltimore getting bit with the injury bug. However, what you saw with Cincinnati last week, what it told me is that offensive line gets exposed by really good pass rushers. Baltimore has the fastest pass rushing defense in arguably the NFL. I mean, there's no real stars in this one. It could be 4 or 5 guys that can really get to the quarterback. And you saw what Myles Garrett did. He just lined up on the center and he was clowning that dude. And he just got to Burrow, pressured him, and there was nothing that Burrow could do. It had nothing to do with Burrow's talent per se. It had to do with the offensive line giving him zero time. So I'm a little bit suspect on that Cincinnati offensive line. I think the injury report, which is interesting, they announced that like 5 key guys were injured, and that line really didn't move too much. I think it was at 3.5. It's now sitting at what, -3. I mean, this to me screams a Baltimore line. Baltimore didn't really play well offensively. I think they will in this game. And really, like Shark said, Cincinnati just starts slow. They go about 4 or 5 weeks in, and then they start picking up the pace and they start winning ball games. So I would say, yes, I agree. Lean on the Ravens, but nothing official for me.
Yeah, yeah, and again, a lot of these games are really tight. We were going through the board a couple of days ago, and I was remarking, I believe there's 10 games on this card that are within 1 point of a field goal, and it speaks to early season parity in the NFL. You're going to see a lot of tight games today, so get ready for it. Speaking of tight games, divisional football, rookie quarterbacks in the AFC South. We're going back to the gun for an official here. Indianapolis Colts on the road off a tight backdoor loss last week to Jacksonville. Second consecutive divisional game at Texans. Texans off a road loss to the Ravens, as we just discussed. Guns picks. This is a grease fire game, yet you have an official.
Yeah, I just want to shout out my guy J Dub. He was hanging out with us in the chat last night watching the Colorado State game on picks from Dave's channel. I'm telling you, I learned a lot about this Colorado team, and it was already stuff I knew. That team is suspect at best, and I can't wait to take Oregon next week. I might make that an official play on Friday, but we will see once we actually look at the opening line. But let's talk about this Indianapolis-Houston game, okay? Rookie versus rookie on this one, okay? Indianapolis coming off a loss to Jacksonville, which Jacksonville, like Shark alluded to in one of his videos, he thinks that they're going to win the South arguably easily. I mean, even with the juice, it's a value bet. They had 31-21 -62 net yards for the game. However, if you actually watch that game, at the end of the game, they got to the 1 yard line. Anthony Richards was pounding the ball really well. He got hurt, had to come off the field. They put in Gardner Minshew, and they didn't put him back into the game. And of course, a rusty quarterback. Even though I love Minshew together, when he's prepped, I think it was just the wrong spot. They didn't get the touchdown. They didn't get the cover. So and anybody that was on that play, I apologize. And it's funny because Shark did off air go, I think this is one of those games where Indy is not going to cover and the Sharps are going to lose. So I wish he would have said that on the air because he was exactly right. But you got to look at Houston on this one, coming off a road loss, 25-9, keeping it close in the net yardage battle, ironically enough, -16 net yards, but getting crushed in the points. So really, I just treat this play. It was my last play on the Circa. I had to find 5 plays. This is probably my lowest weighted game. I will say that on air right now. This play is just playing the trends. These two teams are divisional rivals. They play each other twice a year. Last season, you basically had Houston winning the game by 1 point, and then you had the tie. So there is maybe a little bit of a double revenge there for Indianapolis. But actually, if you look at the matchup in the last 17, the home team is 5-12 straight up in this matchup, and Houston is 1-5-1 against the spread versus Indianapolis in the last 7. So I like the spot for Indianapolis. I think it's a get right spot. I saw some positive things on the offensive side with Anthony Richardson. Not so much on CJ Stroud for Houston. I think that offense is going to take a little bit of growth, but I'm going to take Indianapolis here just based on the trends. I got them at +1 at the Circa. Not the line right now. I didn't pull that up. Forgot that. My bad on the banner, but I would take them money line on this one. Give me Indianapolis 2-unit special.
Yeah, no, I have no lean on the game here, but I do want to make a comment on the total. Go back to last year. The last time these teams played, it was week 18 last year in early January. If you guys remember, Lovie Smith was still the coach of the Texans, and there was a lot of discussion and turmoil to a certain degree about what happened at the end of that game. And what happened was Lovie Smith went for a Hail Mary to win the game 32-31, which did change their draft position. And people were saying, and it's very undocumented and nobody really knows if it's true or not, but people were saying that he was trying to screw them in the draft as he went out. And he certainly did to a certain degree. If you look at CJ Stroud last week, it's hard to really make an argument off of obviously one game, but Stroud did not look particularly good on the road at the Ravens. Comes home here, and Guns mentioned it. We're expecting a lack of offense in this game. And that game that I just referenced, go back to last year again, 32-31. You see a 63-point outcome, a back and forth shootout, and all of a sudden this line comes in at 39.5. They're telling you a story of significantly less points here. I think the sharpest look in this game is the under 39.5. And segueing out of this grease fire to really what probably will be the best game of the 1 o'clock slate here. Everbank Stadium, Jacksonville, Florida. I like to call it the Pit. I call it the Pit for one reason. It's a tough place to play for opponents. Kansas City comes in here off a real dud effort. No Travis Kelce in the opener. 21-20 loss to Detroit on Thursday Night Football going back about 10 days. A lot going on in this game, Guns. I'll throw it to you first, and let's jump off it.
Yeah. So this is probably the premier game in the 1 o'clock. You have KC coming off a loss versus Detroit prime time Thursday night. So they've had some extra time to prepare for this Jacksonville team. I guess the question all week was, is Travis Kelce going to play? That is obviously Mahomes' crutch. Looks like he's going to be on the field per what Andy Reid said, of course. And then Chris Jones coming back, signing a extension with the team. So he'll be playing as well. But I don't know if there's Russ versus Ware coming in a little bit cold, holding out for a better contract this season. And Jacksonville is just one of those hungry teams right now. I mean, seeing him here at +3 at home is probably going to be hot as balls there in Jacksonville. What I've seen from the numbers, it's better to take KC on the road than it is at home. They score more points. They also give up more points. So if there's a lean I have on this one, is just from the historical element from the splits. I would say this is more of an overtake, but I'm not going to play this one at all on the fact that I just feel that maybe KC's due for a little regression, but I won't know that until I watch the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the over is the best look in this game. Obviously, last year these teams did play twice, once in the playoffs, once in the regular season. Both games went far under the total at 51 here. And I was talking about how in week 1 there was a cluster to unders. Obviously, I just suggested you should be taking unders in 2 games. However, there are, 15 games on this card, and I think this is definitely an overlook. The game side here for me is taking on a degree of difficulty. I think the line is fairly sharp. Market steam is coming on KC. I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from. Obviously, people want to buy a buy low. As you mentioned, they perform much better on the road as a short dog. I do think situationally it's hard to read because a lot of those covers last year were specifically at the NFC, as we've detailed numerous times on this show. Games against San Francisco, Arizona, Tampa Bay. Traveling to Jacksonville is not that. It is in conference. It is really, at this point, a rivalry game. It's a tough travel point, and the opening line was short. This line is on Jacksonville. It isn't over. I think this is going to be a really tight, high-scoring, back-and-forth affair. And we're not playing officially, but again, the key point here, the number is on Jacksonville. So just beware of the fact that bounce back is not always as sexy as it sounds. And staying the course here at 1 o'clock, final game on the 1 o'clock slate. Bears, speaking of bounce back, the Bears laying the ultimate egg last week. Incomprehensible, hard to figure out. Obviously, we missed the wager. It was a 2-unit special. I do not take that lightly. It very much frustrated me, and I was very confused as to how a team that had been so poor for so long versus Aaron Rodgers got blown out yet again by the Packers and Jordan Love. But now they go on the road, where I think we might find a situational reversal from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucs cover as a road dog. Now they come home as a home favorite. And you see this in all sports. It's not just exclusive to NFL football. Certain teams perform much better on the road and as an underdog. All of a sudden, they're laying points at home. It flips. I've talked to a lot of sharp guys this week. I do think the sharp angle here is on the Bears, as much as people are probably running and hiding from that take. Ultimately, it's going to be a tough game. These teams have not played in years. The last time they played, it was a totally different roster. In terms of matchup analysis, you are very, very much deficient. But I do think the Bears probably are the sharp look here. Guns, any comments?
Yeah, I stayed way away from that game. I just hated the performance of the Bears last week. You had the right take on the Bears, I thought, but I always say this: Bears will Bears, Jets will Jets. So it's always in my notes. It's like you either fade those teams or you just kind of pass. But you look at Tampa last week. Tampa's win was a little bit misleading, in my opinion. I think they got dominated in the net yards from Minnesota, but Minnesota was just driving down the field and they were turning over the ball. So they capitalized off turnovers and keeping that score very low. So I think that's a misleading total altogether off that win. But you're playing in Tampa. It's going to be stupid hot there. I think we checked the weather on that one. It's going to be at high 80s, 90s, humid. It's not bear weather, as they say. This is going to be a take on maybe Tampa comes out there and Chicago just looks exhausted altogether. And I hate the line. I hate Tampa altogether, and I think there's better spots to fade Tampa down the road. I think maybe next week. If Tampa gets this win next week, I think there's a good spot to fade Tampa. And I just want to shout out to my guys in the chat, Derek, Pace, and Miller. My guys been together for 10 years. I know they're watching right now. They just hit me up on the DM, said, shout out these two brothers, and I'm going to shout them out. So, all right, that's my take on that one. I think it's a complete pass, and we'll see if there's opportunities down the road.
Yeah, without question. It's just a tough game. And certain games, as we mentioned, this is a tough card. There's just a lot of unknowns as we move into not only a new season, but I think a lot of just new teams in the league. This is something that we've talked about numerous times, but I think it's worth remarking is that certain times in sports, leagues have sustainability. The teams have been the teams for 4 to 5 years. You know what's going on. And truthfully, there's a lot of moving parts in the current NFL. But staying the course, second official play from myself. We are going 4:00 slate, Phoenix, Arizona, and we are buying low on the New York Giants in the first half, -2.5, 1 unit official. Dropped this early week. Absolutely love this look. You go back to last week, the Dallas Cowboys did what they were supposed to do: blow out the Giants. They own the Giants. That is not representative of how the Giants play against the rest of the league. And if you really go back specifically in the first half last week, the Giants got absolutely obliterated coming out in the first quarter, but it was mostly because of the Dallas defense. And the Dallas has a top 5 DVOA defense. Their pass rush is relentless. This is, frankly, the polar opposite environment. And you go back to last year, the Giants did take 2 losses to Dallas last year. However, in the game following those losses, they were 2-0 in the first half ATS. This is deep psychology. When you get absolutely blown out in your home stadium, this team will bring it back to the center. They will get jacked up on the road. And final point, going to the other side of this game very briefly, Arizona covered on the road last week as a road dog at Washington. Now they come home. This is that same reversal we're talking about with Tampa Bay. I think the Giants come out here early and often, ready to dominate. 1 unit official, first half, -2.5. Staying at 4:00, throwing it to the gun. A couple games here that we thought were going to be interesting. but frankly, probably will not be that interesting. Jets Cowboys. This was supposed to be a field goal game. This was supposed to be a real just marquee game here at 425, Jerry World, out of division football. Aaron Rodgers no longer here with us for this season. I think he made some comments. He might be back in the playoffs. We would love to see it, but he's not here. It's Zach Wilson on the road at, as I mentioned, an incredible defense from the Cowboys, a team that I did play plus 1,400 to win the title this year. A lot of people said, "You're crazy, Shark." And I said, watch and learn. You saw last week, this team is absolutely diesel. That's why this line is minus 9.5. I think a lot of people are buying low on the Jets at plus 9.5 for maybe the word that I despise more than anything in the world, value. There's no value in sports betting, gentlemen. This is the Vegas sports books setting line averages. Value on a dog is fool's gold at the highest order. I bless you guys that are taking the Jets here today, but frankly, I do see a Cowboys hammer time down on Zach Wilson. Guns picks, any comments?
I really feel bad for all the television companies putting the Jets so many primetime games, and none of them will be with Aaron Rodgers. And I did read that article about Aaron Rodgers. Apparently, I don't know what he's doing. Some new age treatment for his Achilles. It might be ayahuasca. I don't know what he's doing. But yeah, that game overinflated, exaggeration maybe a little bit on what the performance of Dallas versus the Giants. But I will say this, and I want to go back to that Giants game real quick. So there was a stat that was put out by Cal Sports that I thought was kind of interesting. So there's 7 occurrences where since 1998 that a home team has scored 0 points in week 1. When they go into week 2, they are 0-7 straight up and against the spread, dating back to 1998. I thought that was kind of interesting. But granted, it's a lot of stats, a lot of turnover, a lot of teams, whatever. But do that stat. That's just full game, not first half. But I think with the Jets, Zach Wilson just looked pedestrian, immature. He looks scared. He's running back 40 yards and trying to rip the ball down the field like he's in college at BYU again. I don't know if he's comfortable in that offense. That offense was designed for Aaron Rodgers. So you're going to have to rely a lot on the defense all the way through the season with this Jets team. And I think it's funny that Aaron Rodgers thinks that his team's going to make the playoffs now. I mean, with Zach Wilson, I don't know about that one. But, yeah, this is a complete pass for me. I think we need to see the 2 teams with extreme overreactions on both sides. I'll wait and see on this one.
Yeah, and I think there's just I think there's a fool's gold element to the Jets. I mean, people, if you look at what we said about the Bills losing to the Jets on the road last week, that's just purely the Bills not functioning well in the division against this Jets defense. This is a totally different environment. This is out of division, out of conference. And this is really where, frankly, if you look at what happened last week, Zach Wilson, as Guns mentioned, looked very, very confused. He's looked confused his entire career. This guy, honestly, is probably never going to make it as an NFL starting quarterback. We're not throwing shade at the guy. We're purely evaluating his skill and his talent. I don't think he has it. And I think he's going to be really in a tough spot here at Jerry World at 425. I think this defense is going to swallow him up early and often. That's why the total is low at 38.5, minus 9.5 line. It's like a college football line where you see an FCS team playing a big-time team. They're telling you the Jets are not going to score the ball at all. And that Dallas is going to win this game somewhere around like 28-10 or something like that. So I think this is a Dallas spot, and I think the total is probably very, very sharp. Staying at 4 o'clock, sharp stuff. This is a game we don't love, but we're going to talk about every game. Commanders at the Broncos. Broncos off a loss. They were pretty good in the first half. They were terrible in the second half. Sean Payton can't fix Russell Wilson. Seems like Russell Wilson might just be on the downside of his career, unfortunately, for those people who want to back the Broncos. But Commanders come on the road. We're talking about situational reversals. This is the third game that does apply. Washington did not cover. They did win as a home favorite. Now, out of division as a road dog. This is a reversal, and I think this is really a tough line if you're laying it with the Broncos. Guns picks, opening comments.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Once I saw that 3.5, I was just like sick to my stomach watching that. Imagine taking Denver minus 3.5 versus a Commanders team that really didn't play well versus the Cardinals, even at home, in the highest of emotional games with the new ownership. I don't know if I trust Sam Howell to get me through, excuse me, the whole season, nor do I trust Russell Wilson to ever cover a spread as a favorite. I think this line was about the same as they were last week versus the Raiders in the division, and they just couldn't get it done. They lost that game straight up. I just don't trust Russell Wilson in that offense. I do trust their defense. I think their defense is exceptional. However, for the fact that they continue to use that guy to run their offense. They need to make a change, or Sean Payton's going to have a tough tenure for the Broncos.
Yeah, I agree. And we said it last year. We thought it was really a coaching issue with Hackett. Obviously, situationally, the guy was absolutely abysmal in the red zone. The play calling was confusing, to put it mildly, but they didn't look much better in week one. And I do think it comes back to a point that we keep making here, is that Russell Wilson is a bit older now. And he really did rely on his legs, his escapability for years with the Seahawks. And it just seems like that's not in the game right now. And this guy's never been an elite pocket passer. He's a little bit shorter. His launch angle is obviously a little bit higher, pitching it up. And frankly, I think this team is just completely fool's gold at this point. I think Sean Payton might have to move on from this quarterback after the season. And I think the side here probably is Washington. I think it's probably a field goal game, and you're getting Hook side there on the dog. Starting at 4 o'clock, last game of the 4 o'clock slate. Divisional football, NFC West. Niners here just running the cleanest of all sheets with Brock Purdy. When will it end? It seems like the Sharps are thinking this week it might end. Maybe not outright win, but maybe a cover. This did open at +8. This is getting steamed down. I think that is sharp action exclusively. Guns picks. I lost last week. Pittsburgh got absolutely smoked by this team. Are they going to do it again at the Rams?
I think this is probably the most, I would assume, when it's all said and done, when this game tips off, this will be the most public side of the week. I think it'll be on Survivor picks. I think everybody's going to be taking San Francisco, what they saw last week, and that's the overreaction of week one. What I saw from the Rams last week, I saw them play a very flat first half, and then they went in the second half. They made adjustments, and they started taking control of the game versus Seattle on the road. I think this is a spot that I would probably lean on the Rams side on this one, just on the pure overreaction of the performance of San Francisco on the road last week. These are the spots that I normally take. With these two teams, when they play each other, I couldn't check enough boxes, to be honest with you. And I probably, if I had to take a game, I would take the Rams or pass, but it's nothing I'm going to be playing on this one. Division rivals. I will watch this game attentively to see if the Rams are actually back, or they just the same Rams.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as you said, this is probably going to be a really sharp, or excuse me, a very public side on the Niners. And the Niners are just clustering. They're clustering not only in their calendar against the league, but they're clustering so aggressively against the Rams. They've just owned this team for years. Some point's got to come to an end. I'm not sure if it comes today. It's just a tough game to cap. 8:20 p.m., big time football tonight. Road, back-to-back sequence for the Dolphins off a huge win at SoFi Stadium last week, 37-35, back and forth, really, really top level of offensive football. Now they go on the road at New England. Colder weather, hostile environment, divisional football, defensive football. This couldn't be any more opposite to what the Dolphins saw last week from the Chargers. Guns picks, 8:20 p.m. Patriots fan, Patriots plays, official plays, an opportunity to dominate.
Patriots, Gillette Stadium, prime time. Pats, get the fuck up. I love the Pats in this spot. If you actually look at the numbers, what they did with Philly and compare them to what Miami did, statistically, I would say that the Pats should have won that game outright versus Philly. Let's talk about it here. They lost 25-20 to Philly at home on Tom Brady Day of all days. Despite winning the net yardage battle, they had a plus 131 net yards in that game. You don't lose a lot of games like that. The only way you do is because you turn over the ball. Okay. Now you have Miami on the other side winning a dramatic game versus the Chargers in dramatic fashion. They had plus 103 net yards. We talked about that earlier with the Tennessee game. So really, I see Miami as a one-dimensional team. Okay. They don't have a run game. They have a pass-first offense. They put up 466 yards of passing versus the Chargers, but they only had 70 yards rushing on the ground versus the worst rush defense in the NFL in 2022. Okay. Now you have New England, one of the best defenses in the NFL, arguably underrated in my opinion. They held the NFC champs to only 251 yards of total offense, 97 on the ground, and 154 passing. They absolutely contained Jalen Hurts in that game. And then, of course, QB Mac Jones was pressured a lot. He was missing two of his starting guards that he gets back for this game. So that was a lot of the timing and a lot of the pressures that Philly was bringing to the table. I don't think you're going to have it here with Miami. So with those key guys back, I think it's going to be better for them. And now I reviewed the drive chart. I actually dissected this game down to a T to make sure I was on the right side on this one. So you look at Philly in that game versus New England. They got all their points in the first half, okay? As well, and second half they didn't do anything. Here's what they did: block field goal, 2 punts, and an INT. They didn't get into New England territory once in the second half. Okay, that's how good this defense is. They did their job, but however, what hamstrung them, so to speak, is 2 egregious turnovers that put them in scoring position and allowed them to get 14 points. That was the difference in the game. They lost by 5, and that's why I think that statistically, it should have been a New England win straight up. But when you look at these two teams, of course, are divisional opponents. Home team is 10-3 straight up in the last 10 meetings. I just love New England here. They're coming off that loss statistically where they won, just they didn't win on the score. Playing a Miami team coming from a dramatic high scoring win on the West Coast, by the way. So going to the West Coast and traveling back east to go play the divisional opponent. It's going to be electric in Gillette Stadium at night. I think this is a New England play. I saw it at +3 last night and grabbed it in the Circa. I got it at +2.5. So either way, I think this is basically a money line play for me. I think New England wins this game outright.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with you. I'm not on this officially just yet. Obviously, the morning is young here, 11:27 a.m. Eastern. We see you guys on the West Coast. Coach E, what's going on, brother? 8 a.m. over there, sending you all the top vibes on this beautiful Sunday morning. I would agree, though, that the Patriots are the right side here. Obviously, go back to last year, took a road loss 20-7. Not indicative of much. And for those of you guys who have followed Patriots football historically in the Belichick era, dating back now almost 25 years, crazily enough, that team has always been horrendous in Miami. It doesn't matter if it's Tom Brady, Matt Castle, or Mac Jones. It's just the team does not travel well down there to whatever stadium they call it now. Pro player Joe Robbie. Shout out to the OG dogs in this chat.
Was it Land Shark at one point? I think
pro player. What is it called now? Hard Rock Stadium. But I like Joe Robbie Stadium. Give me some Dan Marino. Give me some Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Let's go. But just staying the course with this game for a brief second. They did take a 27 loss there last year, and they came back and they did revenge them 23-21. And as we mentioned, one of the themes of this broadcast that seems to be developing is these teams on these road back-to-back sequences off of wins the previous week. It's very difficult. It is very difficult to back up road success in this league with more road success. And I think this is definitely a Patriot spot. I think the gun is onto something here. He is officially on that. Final play of the broadcast. We're going Monday Night Football. I think this is another really interesting game. I'm going to look at this game in more detail tomorrow afternoon. I think I might go official with the side here. But we're throwing it to the gun. Divisional football in the North in the AFC. Steelers off of the aforementioned blowout loss. Really hard to figure out what happened in that game other than maybe just, I don't know, Kenny Pickett may be feeling it as the captain and the starter for the first time. But nonetheless, bounce back start. You bought the Browns last week. Now you're fading them. Zigzag, consistency to the inconsistency. An official play on Monday Night Football.
It's pure and simple. Just look at the matchups between these two teams. We took Cleveland last week because why? I was like, they just dominate Cincinnati. It's historical. It doesn't matter who's a quarterback. It doesn't matter how good that team is. Cleveland just steps the game up and dominates them. But in this spot, I love the Steelers. Okay. So Cleveland coming off that win last week, I did mention 24-3 versus Cincinnati, winning the net yards battle plus 208. They basically just bull rushed the center with Myles Garrett and gave Burrow no time to pass. They had a -2 turnover ratio in that regard for Cleveland. So Cleveland actually lost the turnover ratio in this one. So you have Pitt just gotten stomped by arguably the best team in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers, as it stands right now in week 2, 30-7, and got crushed on the net yards, -152. So when you look at Pitt, you look at their season outcomes and everything, they're a roller coaster ride. They started the season first 8 weeks, 2-6 straight up, then went on a 7-2 run to finish the season. That is not because they're slow starters. That is due to injury. I think TJ Watt is the guy, the centerpiece, the cornerstone, the pillar of the success of the Steelers. And it showed right there in those stats. Once he came back into the lineup, that team excelled and it got everybody else pumped up. Also, you got to look at Cleveland. Suspect line, by the way. So against Cincinnati, they gave up 3 sacks, okay? 10.3 sack rate, which is not great considering last season Cincinnati was ranked 29th in sack percentage in 2022. All right. So what you saw there is you saw a bad pass rushing team get to the quarterback versus Watson. A lot of hype with him, by the way, going into the season. But however, he only had 154 yards passing, 55.2% completion rate, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. If you actually break down the film of him, he was missing open receivers. He was hitting them in the feet. He looked damn rusty. And the score doesn't tell the whole story about this Cleveland offense. I think this Cleveland offense is suspect at best. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will expose them. Also, Cleveland is running into some injury issues, especially on the offensive line. They lost Conklin; he's on IR. Their other tackle is questionable, so check that one out too. So they may be missing 2 of their starting tackles in this game, and that's not good when you're facing a pass rush like the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you look at the history of this matchup, Pittsburgh won and covered 5 out of the last 6 meetings. Home team is 7-3 straight up, and the last time Pickett and Watson played was at the end of the season last year, and Pittsburgh won 28-14. So give me Pittsburgh as a dog. Sprinkle on the money line. It's a great play. Public is gonna. The perception is Cleveland is back. If they were ever back, I would take Pittsburgh here plus 2.5.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I'm going to look at this in more detail tomorrow. But the gun on the Steelers at home bounce back, and I couldn't talk them off that from a psychological narrative. They have to play a lot better here. Last week was an absolute anomaly, just really hard to figure out. So wrapping it up on that, 51 minutes in the books. 2 top plays for me, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. Buffalo in the first half at home off of a dud at the Jets where they functioned great. 4-0 in the first half last year at home outside of the division. I expect to turn up here early and often. First half minus 5.5, 1 unit. New York Giants on the road off of just obliteration at home last week in the opener against Dallas, traveling to where the Cardinals should function far more poorly than they did as a road dog at Washington. Guns picks, 4 top plays. Tennessee plus 3. Atlanta -1, -3 now. Indianapolis +1. And Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football plus 2.5. A beautiful Sunday it is, September 17, 2023. We appreciate you guys immensely, sending you guys top vibes. Sundays are for the Sharps. Guns picks, an opportunity conquered. Love working with you. It's a pleasure as always. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, I just want to shout out to the chat. Smoke and Mirrors, Thieves by Law, RS Coin, J Dub, a true gun disciple himself, Coin, Jared Smith, Piano, Football Guy 97. He's in all of our chats. So shout out to that dude for supporting us. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel if you love our content. It's just going to help us grow, and also throw some comments in there. I'll go check the comments after the show. I will answer any questions that you have, and so will the Shark. So just go into the comment section, and we will be interactive with you guys. But I appreciate you guys joining us here on this beautiful Sunday. Let's cash some tickets as always. Let's keep dancing. A bang.